Blackbeard has always been foreshadowed as the final villain of One Piece. Since the very beginning, Oda has laid the groundwork, from his mysterious mention during Drum Island to his chilling debut in Jaya, where he dropped one of the most iconic lines in the entire series, "A man's dream never ends." From that moment on, we knew this man was different, and yet, right now, Blackbeard doesn't quite feel like the world-ending threat he's supposed to be. Meanwhile, we've got Xebec, Blackbeard's father, one of the most hyped figures in the series, a man whose very name shook the fandom. His legacy, his strength, his ambition to dethrone the world government, it all paints the picture of a monster among monsters. And in comparison, Blackbeard hasn't exactly delivered. Sure, he's a Yonko with a 3.996 billion bounty, and he has pulled off some major feats, but most of them are off-screen, and we have yet to see anything on the same destructive scale as Rox from Blackbeard. And here's where the narrative tension comes in. If Rox is Blackbeard's father, then we're not just dealing with another antagonist. We're watching the continuation of a legacy. And in storytelling terms, it makes no sense for the father to be the peak. Blackbeard has to surpass Rox, not just to become the ultimate threat to Luffy and the Straw Hats, but to fulfill the will of Rox himself. He has to be the one to finally challenge the world government and throw the world into chaos. But the big question is how. Luffy, in Gear 5th, feels untouchable right now. Joy Boy, the warrior of liberation, it's going to take something extraordinary to pose a real threat to him. So what power-ups does Blackbeard need? What cards does he still have to play? And how has Oda secretly been setting this up the entire time? Turns out, all the missing puzzle pieces are finally falling into place. In today's video, we're breaking it all down. How Blackbeard is going to surpass Xebec and why the era of Blackbeard is just beginning. Let's dive into it together. To start things off, there are three major moves Blackbeard is going to make for his plan of world domination, and each one will massively boost his power. But the first and the most direct is something that would instantly change the balance of power in One Piece forever: Blackbeard getting a third devil fruit. We already know the basics. Blackbeard is the only person in the story to ever wield two devil fruits. From the earliest days of One Piece, we were told this was impossible. Eat a second fruit and your body literally explodes. But Teach broke that rule. He now possesses the Yami Yami no Mi, the fruit of darkness, and the Gura Gura no Mi, the fruit of earthquakes. Even without a third fruit, this already makes him one of the most dangerous pirates alive. The Yami Yami no Mi lets him nullify other devil fruit powers entirely, and pull opponents into an inescapable gravitational void. The Gura Gura no Mi, once wielded by Whitebeard, gives him the ability to create devastating shockwaves capable of sinking islands and tilting entire seas. These two powers complement each other perfectly: darkness to disable, earthquakes to destroy. And yet, for Blackbeard, 2 is not enough. The idea of a third devil fruit has been one of the longest running theories in the community, and when you start looking at the details, you realize this is not just a wild fan guess. It's something Oda has been teasing from the very beginning. From his first appearance in Jaya, the rule of 3 has surrounded Blackbeard. In his debut panel, we see him with exactly 3 crew members beside him. His pirate flag bears 3 skulls. Marco directly told us at Marineford that Blackbeard's body is different, almost like it houses more than one person. And Oda, he's kept that explanation hidden for over a decade. When Oda hides something that long, it's never meaningless. It's waiting for a climactic payoff. If Blackbeard's body is truly unique, possibly due to abnormal anatomy or some unknown condition, it could explain how he's able to wield multiple devil fruits without dying. This is why, for years, many fans believed that his third fruit would be the fabled Cerberus Zoan, a mythical beast with 3 heads, perfectly matching the 3-skull motif. It would not only fit the symbolism, but it would also give him the raw physical power of a Zoan to complement his Logia and Paramecia abilities. But here's the twist. In recent manga chapters, we've seen the Cerberus fruit already in the possession of someone else, the current leader of the Holy Knights, Saint Shamrock. This changes the playing field. So now the question becomes, if not Cerberus, then what? When we start thinking about possibilities, the pattern becomes clear. Blackbeard already has arguably the strongest Logia in the series, and one of the strongest Paramecia. That means his third devil fruit is almost certainly going to be a Zoan, and there are 3 very plausible candidates. Possibility number 1, Blackbeard somehow acquires Kaido's fruit, the Uo Uo no Mi model Azure Dragon. After Wano, Kaido's fate has been left deliberately vague. No confirmed death, no confirmed survival. If Kaido is truly gone, his devil fruit is back in circulation. And let's be real, in terms of mythical zones, there's almost nothing more broken than becoming a literal dragon. Blackbeard, with the destructive reach of the Gura Gura, the suppression of the Yami Yami, and the raw durability and flight of Kaido, that's nightmare fuel. Possibility number 2. At some point, Teach could take down Shamrock and claim the Cerberus zone after all. Just because it's currently in someone else's hands doesn't mean it will stay that way. This is Blackbeard we're talking about. His entire career has been built on stealing from others. If the Cerberus fruit truly exists, it's hard to imagine Oda creating it and not tying it back into Teach's hands. But there is a third possibility as well that is far more interesting. In recent chapters, we learned something crucial about Rock's D. Xebec. Rox had a plan that required two specific devil fruits. We can assume one of them was the Yami Yami no Mi, the exact fruit Blackbeard spent decades hunting, even killing a crewmate to obtain. But that means there's still a second devil fruit out there, one that Rox deemed just as important. Rox intended for one of these fruits to be eaten by Harold, Loki's father, to unlock its true potential. And we also know from the lore of Elbaf that there exists a legendary devil fruit passed down through generations of giants. Put these pieces together, and there's a strong possibility that the second devil fruit Rox coveted is in Elbaf right now. And if Teach knows about it, as he likely does, given his obsessive study of devil fruits, then it's entirely possible he will make a move for it. And if Blackbeard gets his hands on that fruit, it wouldn't just make him stronger. It would mean he is directly continuing his father's plan, the very plan Rox couldn't complete. That's the ultimate narrative payoff. Blackbeard would not only surpass Rox in raw power, but symbolically take on his will. If this happens, Blackbeard wouldn't just be another great pirate. He'd be the greatest threat in the history of One Piece. A man with the strongest logia, one of the strongest paramecia, and a mythical Zoan that ties it all together. And when the final battle with Luffy arrives, he wouldn't just be a villain. He'd be the ultimate test of everything Luffy has become. If there's one thing that's been flying under the radar when it comes to Blackbeard's rise, it's not just his devil fruits, it's the armies he could potentially control. And in the world of One Piece, there is no greater manufactured fighting force than the Seraphims. Right now, the Seraphims are basically the world government's ultimate trump card. These aren't just ordinary pacifistas. We're talking about living weapons built with Lunarian traits, giving them white hair, brown skin, black wings, and an insane natural durability that makes them borderline indestructible. On top of that, each Seraphim is modeled after a former Shichibukai, meaning they retain the abilities, skills, and fighting styles of some of the strongest pirates in history. Add in laser weaponry and the ability to wield devil fruit powers through artificial means, and you've basically got the perfect hybrid soldier. But here's the thing. Right now, the Seraphims are under the control of the Gorosei and Vegapunk's command hierarchy. They follow a strict chain of command where authority chips determine who they listen to. At the very top, the Gorosei have absolute control. Below them are Vegapunk and his satellites. Below that are the Marines. So how could Blackbeard possibly command them? This is where things get interesting. We know from Egghead that the control of Seraphims can be overridden by someone with a higher authority than the current user. We also know about the mysterious sneaking entry of two Blackbeard pirates during the Egghead incident, Van Augur and Katarina Devon. They weren't part of the chaos between Luffy, Kizaru, and Saturn. They came in quietly for a very specific mission. And here's the curious part. The only thing they seemed to accomplish was Katarina Devon making physical contact with St. J. Garcia Saturn. This scene was heavily loaded with foreshadowing. Saturn confronted Katarina, asking how a level 6 prisoner from Impel Down could serve under someone else, and her response was telling that Teach is special. Then Saturn himself followed up with, as is his lineage. This line was a direct piece of foreshadowing from Oda, hinting that Blackbeard is indeed the son of Rox D. Xebec, which has been confirmed now. But back to the mission. After Devon touched Saturn, she simply said, "Mission successful." Then they warped away instantly using Van Augur's warp fruit. And this raises a big question. What exactly was the mission? At the time, many of us speculated that Blackbeard's crew might try to use Devon's clone fruit to disguise herself as Saturn and infiltrate Mary Joaz. But here's the twist. Saturn died at the end of the Egghead Island arc. So if the point was infiltration, that opportunity would be gone, right? Which means there had to be a different, more important goal. The answer is simple. Blackbeard didn't care about impersonating Saturn for political purposes. What he wanted was Saturn's authority in the Seraphim command hierarchy. Remember, the Seraphims obey whoever holds the highest ranking order chip or equivalent authority. If Katarina Devon can perfectly mimic Saturn, then in the eyes of the Seraphims, that's as good as the real thing. And the best part, no one outside of Imu and the remaining Gorosei even knows Saturn is dead. That means Blackbeard can now wield this stolen authority in secret, using Devon's disguise to directly command the world government's most dangerous biological weapons. Think about the scale of this. Even in their incomplete state, we've seen the Seraphims' insane potential. S-Hawk, the Mihawk model, was able to hold his own against Blackbeard himself, a current Yonko. This is before they're even at their prime. Oda has made it clear these aren't final versions yet. Once the Seraphims fully grow and their Lunarian traits are at peak strength, each one could be at least on the level of a Yonko commander, maybe even surpassing that. If Teach gains full control over the Seraphims, they become the ultimate war assets. Even the world government, the very organization that created them, would be helpless against their own invention. And in the final war, this could be the exact edge Blackbeard needs to not just rival Rox, but to surpass him completely. Now, if commanding the Seraphim already places Blackbeard in a league above most pirates, there's still one last card that could make him truly untouchable. The one thing that could tip the entire balance of the One Piece world, and that is getting his hands on one of the ancient weapons. We know there are 3 ancient weapons, Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus, and we already have some pieces in place. Uranus, almost certainly in the hands of Imu and the world government. We've literally seen them use it. The mysterious weapon that erased the Lulusia kingdom from the map in an instant, powered by Vegapunk's Mother Flame. That's out of Blackbeard's reach, for now. So that leaves us with 2 options, Poseidon and Pluton. And here's where fate might actually be working in Blackbeard's favor. In the Egghead Island arc, we get an unexpected reveal. Caribou, of all people, is a Blackbeard fanboy. And more importantly, he has some very valuable intel he wants to share with Teach. The locations of Poseidon and Pluton. Remember, Caribou has been tailing the Straw Hats since Fishman Island. He was there when Shirahoshi's identity as Poseidon was revealed. He was there in Wano when the truth about Pluton was hinted at, meaning he's one of the very few people alive who knows exactly where both ancient weapons are. And if he hands that information over to Blackbeard, that's game-changing. So which one would Blackbeard actually go for? First, let's talk about Poseidon. On the surface, it doesn't seem likely. Shirahoshi isn't going to willingly cooperate with Blackbeard, but Teach isn't exactly the kind of man who takes no for an answer. This is the guy who manipulates, outplays, and ambushes his opponents. He has Lafitte, a master hypnotist, on his crew. If Lafitte could hypnotize Shirahoshi, Blackbeard could effectively weaponize her ability to command the Sea Kings. That would give him complete control of the oceans, the very battlefield where pirates rule. Poseidon under Blackbeard's command would be terrifying. But while possible, it's not the most likely move. Now Pluton, that's where things get interesting. Pluton is currently sleeping beneath Wano, sealed behind its massive walls, and we know those walls will be opened eventually. The popular theory is that Momonosuke will do it, but what if it's not his choice at all? What if it's Blackbeard who forces it open? Remember, Teach has the Gura Gura no Mi, the most destructive paramecia in existence. If anyone could shatter Wano's natural defenses, it's him. A few well-placed quakes, and Pluton could be unleashed. There are 2 big reasons why Pluton is the likelier target. First, accessibility. To get Poseidon, Blackbeard would need to descend 10,000 meters under the sea to Fishman Island. A dangerous and logistically difficult task. Pluton, on the other hand, it's in Wano. All he needs to do is sail there and break in. Second, narrative setup. At the end of the Wano arc, Shanks was stationed nearby because he believed Blackbeard might make a move on the country. Why would Shanks expect that? It suggests that Teach already has some interest in Wano, whether it's for Pluton, a devil fruit, or something else entirely. And if we're building toward the final war, it makes perfect sense for Blackbeard to get his hands on an ancient weapon first, and that would definitely make him a world-ending threat. So putting all the pieces together, if Blackbeard actually pulls this off, 3 devil fruits, an army of invincible Seraphim soldiers, and a world-ending ancient weapon, he wouldn't just be a threat to pirates or the Marines, he'd be someone who could stand toe-to-toe with the so-called gods of the One Piece world. A final, terrifying obstacle standing in Luffy's way. The last test before he can achieve his ultimate dream. And in doing so, Blackbeard wouldn't just surpass Rox D. Xebec, he'd finish what Rox once started. So, what do you think? Which devil fruit do you believe Blackbeard will target as his third? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see just how close we are when the story reaches that inevitable, world-shaking battle. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Until next time, I'll see you soon.